So hi, welcome back from lunch. My name's Laura Oliver. I'm a freelance journalist based in the UK, co-founder of the Society of Freelance Journalists. One of my other pieces of work is training in journalism and communications, which means that I am lucky enough to have spent the last 2 days working with the 3 people on stage who are part of the Changemakers program. The Thomson Reuters Foundation Changemakers program, which is funded by Fondation Botnar, brings together some of the most inspiring pioneers who are making changes in their countries, in their regions, and finding concrete solutions to human rights issues. We have 7 of them with us at the conference today and tomorrow. Please seek them out. Hopefully there will be their faces behind me in a moment. Seek them out, learn what they're working on. They represent projects in Indonesia, India, Tanzania, Senegal, Ghana and West Africa, and Romania. So, plenty to choose from. I want to introduce you very briefly to my colleagues here on the stage, and then I'm going to hand over to each of them to talk a little more about their work. First, I have Gideon Sarpong, Policy and News Director of iWatch Africa, who's going to talk to us about his work to improve the safety of journalists online, including guidelines and a very concrete plan to counter online abuse and harassment. Then we have Imani Hendrick, station manager of Kings FM Radio in Tanzania and founder of the Dig It with Imani podcast, who's going to share her thoughts on the role that journalists can play in creating inclusive digital spaces and communities, especially for women and young people. And then last but not least, you feel very far away from me, Andras, but Andras Farkas, strategic director of Pont Group in Romania, who's going to talk about using digital spaces to enable young people to be part of the future of cities. Gideon, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you very much, Laura. It was interesting earlier when I listened to Irene Khan, the UN Special Rapporteur, as she eloquently spoke about the issues about journalist safety online, particularly when she spoke about how women often disproportionately receive very graphic levels of hate in dealing with their work. For me, as part of my work at iWatch Africa and also over the last year as a Reuters Fellow at Oxford University, I've been working to develop concrete sort of guidelines that can help newsrooms, particularly within the African region, set up online safety units that can help counter this level of hatred which undermines press freedom, and genuinely it's a threat to the democracy we have back home. So over the last year, my work has been divided into a 5 main point roadmap, which we've started deploying with some newsrooms in West Africa. The first point in dealing with online threats we identify has to do with building literacy when it comes to digital rights within the news space environment. And here we mainly refer to what journalists should expect when working within the online environment, the nature of abuses they should expect, and what really even constitutes an abuse and the evolving nature of these abuses. The second main point which we work with has to do with establishing a safety culture or safety practices within the newsroom. It is always important that top managers make it very, very clear within the newsroom environment that online abuse is to be taken seriously. There should be a record of these abuses because it is important for the third point, which is risk analysis. Within the newsroom environment and within the online environment, that the nature, the form online abuses take is very important also because of how you must respond to the nature of the threat. So here you talk about the intensity of the attack. What is the level of discriminatory material in the attack? You can also look at what is the likelihood that if an online attack is not taken seriously, the public might believe the attack to be genuine or credible. Then finally, in assessing the risk of online threats, you could also look at the likelihood of a spillover. We've had instances where online attacks result in physical attacks and harms. Then we look at the third point, which has to do with implementing supporting mechanisms. There is an obvious fact that a lot of newsrooms are very under-resourced, particularly across the African region. But the good thing is that we have a lot of civil society organizations and NGOs. And this is also part of the literacy aspect of it, where journalists are exposed to most of these civil society organizations that help support, give legal support, emotional and psychological support when need be, and also financial support in dealing with these online threats we face. Then finally, there shouldn't be any ambiguity when it comes to who is responsible for dealing with such threats within the newsroom environment. We must always have clear responsibilities and clear roles for individuals. In the event that I am attacked, I should know who to report to. The person should be a person who genuinely understands the issues at hand, and the person should be somebody who is also credible. Finally, for a journalist in a remote part of Uganda or a remote part of Ethiopia who feels threatened to report on health access for pregnant women or report on corruption, she doesn't only lose her voice in this space, the pregnant woman would also lose her voice, the community would lose their voice, and a whole generation would lose their voice. This is why it is very, very important that we deal with online violence against journalists. Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. And I want to come back a little later to how you're applying this in West Africa and the journalism that you do. Imani, you and I are going to have a chat rather than a presentation. But first of all, I want you to tell us a little bit about the situation as you see it in Tanzania when it comes to digital spaces and digital rights.
Thank you very much. Currently, I can say the situation is not much good, not much bad. They are somewhere in between. Because on the past leadership system, the situation was really worse. People were not really much heard online, were not really using online spaces free. But currently with campaign, with awareness, with digital rights activists, the situation is getting better, though it's slowly, because the country didn't have even the privacy policy that can guide people online to protect their information. But currently, we have a bill that has been proposed to the parliament. So that's why I say the situation is not really good, really bad. They're in between. I think the light is at least seen.
Which is great to hear.
Yeah.
But you are also one of those people who has been advocating for greater digital rights. So can you tell us a little bit about your work, and particularly some of the journalism you've done, but also the campaigns you've been involved with?
As a journalist and digital rights advocate, I've been writing documentaries and articles to create more awareness on the importance of digital rights, not only to the journalists, but also to the normal people that are using digital spaces and social media, because that's where their voices can head, that's where that can get opportunities, that's where they can also learn. So I've been writing documentaries, I've been writing articles, but also, as you mentioned on my introduction, I'm the founder of the podcast known Dig It as Imani, Dig It with Imani. So this podcast talks about digital rights and awareness, especially for women and young people in Tanzania, but also it talks about how people can go through cyberbullying threats that they experience online. And also it amplifies the people's opinion on what they want government to do when people experience cyberbullying online. What do they want the cases to be handled? But also I interview some government key speakers and also Tanzania Communication Regulatory Authority to talk to people at an authority. What do they do and what do they take in consideration from people's opinion on what they wish the government and authority could do about digital space and digital rights?
That's very interesting, because I think this is going to come up actually when Andras talks to us too. Your work has also looked at, and I know we were talking yesterday, you also mentor young journalists as well. Could you tell us a bit about, you think, the role of journalists and media specifically in addressing this and the work you're doing with other journalists?
I can say in Tanzania, I think technology is ahead of us. And I can say, as a media, as a journalist, we have done some part, but we have not done enough. Because even journalists ourselves, some of us doesn't know what it takes for them to stay safe online. So if you don't know what it takes for you to be safe online, how can you advocate for other people to stay safe and to be safe online? So I can say this is sad, but that's the reality. So we need to do more. As journalists, we need to educate ourselves how to stay safe online, how to handle the online threats, as my colleague shared. And if we will know how to handle ourselves, how to stay ourselves safe online, we will be strongly and more informed to tell other people to stay safe online. So generally, I can say that we have done, but we have not done enough. We need to do more and more.
Still more to do. Okay, I'm going to come back to some of these things when we have a discussion in a moment, but I also want to hear from Andras.
So basically what we try to do back in Cluj, the second city of Romania, but also we try to understand it as a framework, is how the city's future are connected to what cities are doing together with young people today. Now, seeing Alkes's photos in the morning, I put myself the question if we should think about the future or we just need to solve some urgent things. However, what we try to do, and we're starting from the premise, is that most of the things in the world are happening in cities. They are meeting points. They are meeting points for people, for thoughts, for everything. So change is happening there. Now, the second question is, and try to imagine that I'm 18 years old, okay? So I'm not, but try to imagine that I'm 18. We are in 2022. In 2050, I will be aged 46. Most probably, my generation will be the most powerful and the most influencing generation regarding cultural, economic, and political aspects. Now, the question is how the cities will look like in 2050. So if we are coming back to our own lives and my own age of 43, I'm putting myself the question, okay, what should we do today with young people, together with young people, in order for them at that moment in the future to be able to have the city we are imagining all together. So what we are saying, and this was based on some of the work we have done back home, is that basically this is a city's youth future kind of framework. There are 3 by 3 layers. If I'm a young person, 18 years of age, my problem is how do I feel today? So it's health and well-being. COVID didn't help. Then my second question is what I will do in the future. What do I need to learn? What I will do in my life? Where will I do it? What city will I choose, maybe? The third question is how we all together advance towards that future. So what we are saying that cities as a conglomerate of municipalities, companies, institutions, young people themselves, we as an enabling environment, we should give young people 3 basic things. Space. Space meaning safe spaces when young people can thrive. Spaces where we are not in suits, but we are in t-shirts, because young people feel more comfortable if we are in t-shirts. We need to give them human support meaning all the kind of mentorship, training, learning things, which doesn't tell them what to do, but which helps them figuring out themselves what to do. And the third thing we are saying is that we need to provide them funding, and funding in the most simplified way. What we are testing in Cluj, and it still seems to work, for 7 years now we have a participatory budgeting process for youth, where actually we are calling out to young people together with the municipality, asking them, what would you like to do in your own community? Whatever you would like to do. And if you're proposing this idea, you're developing with your team, you propose it for the public vote, the community votes, then you are also getting funding in a very simplified way of an award to actually deliver that activity. Imagine that these are projects worth 1,000 euros, so very small. In addition, with what we added to this year is to create a youth innovation fund, partly from municipal money, partly from private company money, partly from international foundations, through which young people can come forward with their business ideas, which solve some problem in the community. They are getting 3 levels of funding, 3,000 first, 12,000 second, 35,000 more. They don't need to have a company to apply in the first 2 levels. They are getting it as an award. Our conclusion is, and I will just come back to the closing sentence, is that what we feel that young people will figure it out themselves. What we also feel is that we cannot project the future in 28 or 30 years. So what we, older people, could do is just to create the setting, the table, when young people can come forward, they feel comfortable enough, and they themselves will figure it out with all our physical space help, all the human support, and all the funding needed. So the question is, because it's about cities, how can we make this as a joint vision? Can we relate to this? What can we do all together in order to create these enabling environments? And I truly feel that young people will figure it out themselves. And what we need to do in a forward-looking way is just to create the proper setting for them to actually do this. Thank you.
Thanks, Andras. Yeah. Now, we have a short amount of time for discussion, and I apologize to our audience because we're on a tight schedule. We can't take questions from you. So please, as I said, seek out my friends here on stage, the other changemakers who are here today and tomorrow. But I'm going to ask each of you a quick question in turn, but please jump in with your own thoughts. Specifically, Gideon, going back to your work and this guidance that you've helped develop, tell me how you're applying that at iWatch Africa and with journalists in West Africa.
So, I believe that guidelines shouldn't necessarily stay guidelines. We should have a way to actualize these guidelines. So at the moment, back home in Ghana and in Nigeria, we are working with senior news reporters from 20 newsrooms. And what we do is that we take them through step-by-step process of the guideline and how they can set up an online safety unit. Where we are beginning from is we are starting a conversation within these newsrooms to even acknowledge that there is a problem when it comes to online harassment, particularly disproportionate targeting of women. We are not also advocating for a very huge unit size because we understand the resource constraints and that we want journalists to be journalists and cover stories. A one-man person who genuinely understands, or a lady who understands the issues and can take it up from there. This is what we are striving to achieve, to begin a conversation that can go around the whole continent. Yes.
And for anyone in the audience who wants to find out more about your work, where can I direct them?
My work can be found on the Reuters Institute website and also on iWatchAfrica.org. Yes.
And Imani, I wanted to come back. You started to mention this excellent phrase that technology is ahead of us, which you said is the situation in Tanzania, but is true in many places around the world. Can you talk a little bit about, are there threats to these digital rights that we're not talking about enough, that we're not focusing on enough, and you think we should be paying more attention to?
Oh, there are a number of threats online, I think we all know. I think we don't mostly talk about phishing, because phishing normally happen like in DMs, in inbox, in emails. And many people do not know like how to report it, how to start a conversation telling a person like, I've received this email, someone has promised me to send something, someone has directed me to click this link, maybe I'll get a certain gift or whatever. So I think this is one of the threats we don't mostly talk, and it harms a lot of people online because they have been, their information, their privacy information have been collected by the people they don't know, and because, taking an example in Tanzania, most of people doesn't know like really what phishing looks like. What should I do? How does these messages looks like arrangement? And you can find like sometimes the message is too long and has a lot of information probably about you. So you feel like, oh, this is, maybe this is right person, I should respond, I should do like wherever someone is directing me. So I think we should put more effort to educate our people, especially in Tanzania. Of course, I've started to do something, and I'm glad that even the Tanzania authority, Communication Authority has started some campaigns, and I've been involved to educate the society how to act, how does these phishing emails and messages looks alike. So I think that's one of the biggest threats we don't mostly talk about.
You were saying to me yesterday that, I mean, a lot of emphasis in Tanzania has been around trolling and cyberbullying, which is obviously incredibly important, but the cybersecurity side has perhaps not had such focus. I wonder if, Andras, Gideon, there are threats that you think we don't talk about enough in your work or in Romania or West Africa?
So, I mean, for me, the biggest threat I see currently is the weaponization of misinformation and disinformation, and also security laws against journalists, because this is a state actor. So if a state actor is coming after you, that is also quite different from online mobs. And that is a challenge, I think, that as journalists and also as policy analysts and civil society actors here, we should really take a critical look at and find some solutions to it.
I would say bullying. Bullying is a huge problem. It's also among young people, but also in different settings, because it is destroying the very part of the digital world, which is the safe part, so it becomes unsafe. So you this is creating a lot of mental health issues, which is again the basic problem where you're starting from. How do you feel today? Because if you're not feeling well, you will not think about your future and you will not participate in the society. So we identified bullying. We still don't know what to do with it, to be honest, but it is there and we don't understand it, really.
And I think another aspect of bullying, which is even more critical, is when it is politically aligned or politically inspired, because then if there are political actors who must take action, because they are the originators of the bullying or misinformation or disinformation campaign, no action is taken.
Maybe I can say in Tanzania, action is taken if it's to a public figure person. But for normal people, action is completely not taken. And this makes most of the digital platform user normalize bullying online, because there is nothing taken, no one is taking action. And many people have been complaints like, I've gone to police, but they have not helped me. So I think we should campaign as well to police and gender desks that they should know what cyberbullying is, and they have to set the policies how to deal with cyberbullying. Because, for example, in Tanzania, we have laws, but we don't have the specific laws that govern the cyberspace about bullying that happens online. So I think we really need that, and the actors should really educate and be aware about the bullying that normally happens online, because this excludes more people online, and we have a bigger work like to make them trust again the online platforms.
And we haven't got a lot of time left, but I would like to end on a kind of slightly more forward-thinking or positive note. You've all talked about, the need for greater media literacy or digital literacy. And Andras, you were talking about how we design ways that young people can participate in this decision-making. I wondered if you had any thoughts about how we get young people involved in the design of digital spaces so that they can participate, or how do we understand what they're thinking when I too am not a young person anymore. So how do we get them involved successfully?
So what they are thinking, I have no idea. I'm waking up every morning that something changed since yesterday, so we need to ask them a lot. But it's also very important where and how we ask them, because if they don't feel safe to answer, they will not answer. They will just avoid the question. I I really think is that we need to simplify as much as possible. I know that in the media world, simplifying is the wrong thing, but with young people, it's a good starting point. And what I think is that we just really need to create those safe spaces, either digitally or non-digitally, where they feel safe to fail, if that's the case, to try, most importantly, to try again and again and again, and then to enable all the background mechanisms which might be complicated, like, for example, an online voting system which doesn't need to fail, which cannot be corrupted, like in the participatory budgeting, which is essential. And what we also tried to do with the participatory budgeting, and it took us 4 years to convince the municipality that in the general PB, only people aged 18 could have voted, but we said to them, if a young person aged 14 can propose an idea, it is so stupid not to be able to vote on that very idea. So after 4 years, we convinced them in the platform, which was technically like probably 15 minutes of work for a programmer, to switch the thing and to have the ability for a young person aged 14 to create an account and in the youth participatory budgeting to vote. It's a very good thing where you start to participate. You propose ideas, then you have the chance to implement them, you get the support, you're gaining trust, you realize things, you figure it out. And then again, if young people figure it out, I really think we will be safe in 2050, by the way.
We are almost to time. I would like to thank our panel very much for reminding us of what came up in a panel earlier, that it's no longer enough just to show concern. We need to take action. And all of you are taking action in your areas of work to solve some of these problems and to address them. As I said, please go meet our Changemakers. They are here today and tomorrow. But other than that, I would just really like to take a moment to thank Gideon, thank Imani, thank Andras for sharing your work with us, and to applaud in the usual way as thanks.
Thank you.